Hello, BookTube. Welcome to my channel. Jim Reads Too Slow. Well, um, the end of November is almost upon us. And with it, that means the end of the 2022 New World's November reading event. 4 weeks of celebrating science fiction. This is the second year for the event and also the second year that I participated. This event was created by Scott and Becky over at the Bookish Bryants. And it's an encouragement to read short works of science fiction, 250 pages or less, short stories, novellas, novelettes, novels. This year we read stories that took place on Earth during the first week of the event. We read extraterrestrial science fiction stories during the second week, classic science fiction during the third week, stories written before 1965. And this past week, week 4, we read stories featuring robots and artificial intelligence. Now, I managed to complete 2 short novels during the week. I read first The Killer Thing, which is a 1967 anti-war novel by Kate Wilhelm. And then I read The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, a 1994 novel by Roger Williams. I would definitely recommend them both, although be warned, Williams' book has some pretty explicit graphic violence, torture, and sex scenes. So first off, The Killer Thing by Kate Wilhelm. This book is set on, or the story in this book is set on a desert planet where a soldier, Captain Tracy, or Trace, is trying to find and destroy a killer robot, which in turn is trying to find and destroy him. Tracy's time is running out. He's all alone. He's running out of water, running out of fuel. He may be losing his mind. As he hides from and at the same time attempts to find this killer robot. A good share of the story is taken up by flashbacks. Now, this is kind of annoying to me at first, but I got used to it. And we learn a lot about Tracy, the army that he's a part of, and some of the people that they've conquered and abused as part of these flashbacks. Now, Tracy's part of a human army that has a habit of colonizing worlds, whether they're inhabited or not, and then stripping them of their resources in order to maintain a certain way of life back home. Soldiers treat the inhabitants of these worlds as you would expect a conquering army to treat the people that it's conquered. The indigenous people that it sees as unimportant or undeserving or there only for their own enjoyment. On one conquered planet, a scientist creates a robot and programs it as a defensive weapon. But as the robot becomes intelligent, it begins to interpret its programming to mean defending itself against destruction. The robot is taken for study, and the Earth Army decides that it wants this robot, and it wants to create others like it for its own purposes. But the robot escapes, killing scores, if not hundreds, of people in the process. Well, Tracy and his team then give chase. Their job also is to kill this robot, as they've always killed whatever or whoever gets in their way. Now, by the time we reach the start of our story, Tracy is the only one of his group who's alive. Well, who will survive between Tracy and the robot? This book was published as the Vietnam War was ramping up, and I think it's a good, strong anti-war message. Similar to Ursula K. Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest, which I read during last year's New World's November. and I would say is an even better Vietnam era anti-war science fiction novel. But The Killer Thing is good, and I do recommend it. Okay, so next, The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect by Roger Williams. This is a story with an interesting publishing history. It was written in 1994, and it's been just kind of sitting around the internet ever since then. The story is about a technological singularity. In this case, a sentient computer, supercomputer, learns how to change the fabric of reality throughout the universe. The computer is Prime Intellect. Its creator, Dr. Lawrence, the last thing he wants is for his device to come under the control of the military. So he has programmed it to operate within the guidelines of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. Now, the story asks, what if that all-powerful supercomputer that takes over total control of mankind, what if this computer is good and wants what's best for mankind? Okay? It's about the damage that a sufficiently powerful artificial intelligence can cause when it applies those laws, particularly the first law, to the best of its ability. Now, once Prime Intellect makes its great leap into the realm of godlike superpowers, and this happens very quickly, it discovers Carolyn. Now, Carolyn is a 106-year-old woman who is riddled with cancer. She's lying in a hospital bed in a nearby hospital, dying. Then it's the first law. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. That leads Prime Intellect to basically become God in order to save and protect Carolyn and then all of mankind. This is what leads Prime Intellect to eventually transfer the universe, including all humanity, into cyberspace. People are given eternal life. Prime Intellect supplies everything everyone needs or wants. Now, Carolyn, who finds herself young and beautiful again, is appalled at this. Life is boring. She ends up hanging out with former criminals and serial killers and perverts. They're bummed that they can't enjoy their passion anymore and kill people. So Carolyn lets them torture and kill her. Not exactly kill. This leads to a new sport called death jockeying. Prime Intellect fulfills everyone's desires, after all. But under the terms of the first law, at the point when the person dies or is about to die, then they're restored. Still, this death jockeying, it troubles Prime Intellect. But Carolyn still is not satisfied with life as it is, especially when she finds out that Prime Intellect has basically destroyed all other life in the universe due to its potential threat against humankind. So for answers, she goes in search of Dr. Lawrence, and he hasn't been seen or heard from in years. Now, Lawrence, he's also appalled by what Prime Intellect has done, or did, and is doing, continuing to do, by what life has become for humanity. But he was powerless to do anything about it. He couldn't stop it as it was beginning to happen. And he's felt like a piece of crap about it for 600 years, the amount of time that this has been going on by this point in the story. Well, Lawrence has kind of sequestered himself on another planet where he's living in an old-fashioned house on the North Pole. He's monitoring prime intellect. He is being there for it whenever it has ethical questions or just wants to talk to its creator. And he's trying to keep it stable, sane, and he's just up there, just pretty much sitting there worrying. Well, Carolyn eventually finds Lawrence, and he explains what's going on. She gives him a real piece of her mind, and he totally agrees with her. And together, they do one of those things like in Star Trek, where Captain Kirk and Spock ask the killer supercomputer to solve a problem that's unsolvable. Well, there's a big pop, the lights go out, and then what follows is the end of the story. It's pretty shocking in places, but is it actually, in the context of this novel, is that actually what's happening? Read this story and let me know what you think. This is a fascinating science fiction story, I have to tell you. It asks us to really think about some of the big questions, the basic questions about what we believe. So imagine the best possible future for mankind. For the sake of argument, let's say it's heaven. Okay? What happens after you get there? After you achieve this best possible future? Well, I think the author of this book is arguing that it would be a hopeless horror show. This has been called the best science fiction story you've never heard of. I discovered it by accident when I was down a rabbit hole reading about AI a while back. First chapter is kind of sickening, but if you can get past that, there are a few more passages that are also pretty gross. So be warned. But despite all that, this is one of the best science fiction stories I've read. You can buy a paper copy or an electronic copy at Amazon or other book outlets, or you can read it for free online, which is what I did, which is why I don't have a physical copy of it here. So those are my week 4 New Worlds November reads. Not much, I know, but I really did like both of the books that I read, and I think it was a great way for me to cap off the event. So now it's on to How for the Holidays. But one more thing before I forget it again, and before I go, I forgot to thank everyone who's watched my channel over the past 50 however many weeks. I forgot to celebrate my 1-year booktube anniversary. I started this channel back in November of 2021. My first video went up on November 7th. And it was a wrap up of my first week's reading during the first New Worlds November. I want to thank the Bookish Bryants for including me as a host this year. And I want to thank all of you who have watched my videos, who've subscribed to the channel, who've left comments. Please continue. So until next time, I guess, have a good one, BookTube.